The Galactic Assembly Hall was a marvel of architecture, its towering spires gleaming against the backdrop of the cosmos. Within its walls, representatives of countless species gathered to debate, negotiate, and maintain a fragile peace. Among them was Ambassador Jonathan Harker, humanity's representative and a veteran diplomat known for his tact and determination. Humanity's place within the assembly was tenuous, but Harker had fought relentlessly to secure their voice among the galactic powers. On this particular day, Harker stood before the assembly, his voice steady and resonant as he presented humanity's latest appeal. The Terran colonies on the Outer Rim have been subjected to unprovoked attacks by coalition forces. We demand an inquiry and immediate action to ensure the safety of our people. The hall buzzed with murmurs, a mix of disdain and support rippling through the delegates. The Galactic Coalition, a dominant bloc within the assembly, had long viewed humanity as a nuisance, too ambitious, too independent. Their representative, a towering Zorath named Kralin, rose from his seat, his metallic skin shimmering under the chamber's lights. "Ambassador Harker," Kralin began, his tone dripping with condescension. "The Outer Rim is a dangerous region. Perhaps your colonies would fare better if they adhered to the Council's directives instead of charting their own reckless paths." Harker met Kralin's gaze, unflinching. "Reckless or not, our people have the right to live without fear of attack. If the Coalition cannot control its rogue elements, perhaps it is unfit to hold its position within this assembly." Gasps filled the chamber, the boldness of Harker's words leaving many stunned. Kralin's eyes narrowed, his composed demeanor cracking for a brief moment. "Careful, Ambassador," he said, his voice a low growl. "Your words tread dangerously close to provocation." The session adjourned with no resolution, as was often the case in the assembly. Harker returned to his quarters, frustration simmering beneath his calm exterior. The fight for humanity's recognition and safety was an uphill battle, but he refused to yield. Unbeknownst to him, shadows moved within the coalition's ranks. Harker's defiance had drawn their ire, and plans were already in motion to silence him. That evening, as he prepared for a quiet dinner, a small, unmarked drone slipped through the security perimeter of his residence. Its payload, a deadly plasma charge, detonated with precision. The explosion obliterated the building, leaving nothing but smoldering rubble where humanity's ambassador once stood. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Humanity's representative, assassinated on the very grounds of the Galactic Assembly. Official statements from the Coalition condemned the act, feigning ignorance and pledging cooperation in an investigation. But Earth knew better. In the heart of the United Terran Federation, President Elena Moreno stood before a council of military leaders, her expression hard as steel. The assassination of Harker was more than a murder. It was an attack on humanity's sovereignty and dignity. "This is not just an attack on one man," she declared, her voice carrying the weight of her anger and grief. "This is an attack on all of us. They believe they can silence us with fear, that we will cower in submission. But they are wrong. Humanity does not bow. We rise." The room erupted in agreement. It was time for humanity to act, not with words but with strength. Across Earth and its colonies, the call to arms was met with an overwhelming response. Factories shifted to full-scale production of weapons and ships, fleets were mobilized, and alliances were forged with species who had also suffered under the Coalition's oppression. Humanity, long considered a minor power, was preparing for total war. Admiral Marcus Steele, a seasoned strategist, was tasked with leading humanity's response. Standing aboard the flagship Resolute, he addressed the assembled fleet. "The Coalition has taken from us one of our finest, and they will expect us to lash out recklessly. But we are not reckless. We are deliberate, resourceful, and relentless. When we strike, they will understand the true strength of humanity." As the fleet prepared to launch, messages of defiance began circulating through the galaxy. Humanity's declaration of war was not just a reaction to Harker's assassination, it was a statement. The Coalition had underestimated them, and now the galaxy would see what humans were capable of when pushed to the brink. Among the rebel factions, oppressed colonies, and disenfranchised species, humanity's defiance sparked a flame. Whispers of rebellion grew louder, and many looked to Earth as a symbol of resistance. Humanity was no longer alone in its fight. As the Resolute and its fleet entered hyperspace, heading toward the Coalition's strongholds, a sense of purpose permeated every ship. This was more than a battle for justice. It was a battle for survival, for respect, and for the future of humanity. Far from the fleet, in the ashes of the Galactic Assembly Hall, the truth behind Harker's assassination remained buried. But in the hearts of humans across the galaxy, his legacy burned bright. They would honor him not with monuments, but with action. And in doing so, they would carve their place in the stars. The fleet emerged from hyperspace on the edge of Coalition space, the vast expanse of the enemy's territory stretching before them like a fortress of stars. Admiral Marcus Steele stood on the command deck of the Resolute, his gaze fixed on the holographic map displaying the Coalition's defensive formations. The enemy had wasted no time fortifying their borders, their ships arranged in an imposing blockade designed to repel any incursion. "This isn't just a blockade," Steele said, addressing his officers. "It's a statement. They think they can stop us here, show the galaxy that humanity can't strike at their heart." He paused, his voice hardening. "Let's prove them wrong." The fleet's mission was clear: punch through the blockade, secure a forward position, and disrupt the Coalition's supply lines. It was a bold plan, relying on speed, precision, and humanity's ability to adapt under pressure. On board the Resolute, Captain Aria Voss, sister to Lieutenant Mark Voss, prepared her team for the upcoming battle. As the head of a strike unit tasked with disabling the Coalition's critical systems, her role was pivotal. She addressed her squad, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. "Listen up," she said, her piercing blue eyes scanning the group. "The Coalition thinks they're untouchable, but they've never faced us like this. Stick to your training, cover each other, and remember, this isn't just about the mission. It's about sending a message. They took one of ours, and now we're taking everything." The fleet moved into formation, the smaller, agile ships flanking the larger battlecruisers as they approached the blockade. Coalition ships, sleek and menacing, loomed ahead, their weapons systems lighting up as they prepared to engage. The first shots were fired, brilliant streaks of energy slicing through the void. Humanity's fleet responded in kind, their weapons cutting a path through the enemy lines. The battle was fierce and chaotic, the vastness of space filled with the blinding flashes of explosions and the wreckage of ships. Aboard the Resolute, Steele coordinated the attack with precision, issuing commands that kept the fleet one step ahead of the Coalition's countermeasures. "Focus fire on their carriers," he ordered. "Cut off their reinforcements and force their frigates to scatter." Meanwhile, Aria's strike team launched from the Resolute in a swarm of stealth ships, their engines silent as they navigated the chaos of the battlefield. Their target was a Coalition command vessel, its destruction critical to breaking the enemy's coordination. As they approached, the command vessel's defenses sprang to life, turrets swiveling to intercept them. Aria's hands moved deftly over the controls, her ship weaving through the incoming fire with calculated precision. "Evasive maneuvers!" she barked into the comms. "Stick to the plan!" The strike team breached the vessel's hull with explosive charges, their entry swift and surgical. Inside, Coalition soldiers met them with fierce resistance, their advanced weaponry making every step a struggle. But humanity's fighters, driven by a combination of discipline and raw determination, pressed forward. Aria led the charge, her pulse rifle cutting down enemies as they pushed toward the ship's command center. The corridors were a maze of gleaming metal and flickering lights, the air thick with the acrid smell of plasma burns. "Voss, we've got reinforcements coming from the rear!" a squad member called out. Aria didn't hesitate. "Hold the line. We're almost there." The team reached the command center, its reinforced doors a final obstacle. As engineers worked to breach the locks, Aria placed a hand on the detonator strapped to her gear. "Once we plant these charges, we have 2 minutes to get clear. No exceptions. Is that understood?" A chorus of affirmatives echoed through the comms. The doors gave way with a deafening hiss, revealing the coalition officers inside. The sight of humanity's soldiers storming their command center left the officers visibly shaken. Arya wasted no time, ordering her team to secure the room and plant the charges. The coalition officers, though outnumbered, fought with desperate ferocity, but they were no match for the precision and coordination of Arya's squad. With the charges set, Arya gave the order to retreat. "Move now!" The team sprinted back through the corridors, their path lit by the flashing red of the ship's alarms. Behind them, coalition reinforcements closed in, their weapons cutting through the air. Arya turned to cover the retreat, her rifle barking out bursts of fire that slowed the enemy's advance. They reached their ships just as the charges detonated, a massive explosion ripping through the command vessel. The shockwaves sent debris spiraling into the void, and the coalition's blockade faltered as their forces scrambled to recover. Back aboard the Resolute, Steele watched the explosion with grim satisfaction. "Well done, Voss," he said over the comms. "That's one less piece on their board." The victory was significant, but the battle was far from over. The coalition's forces, though momentarily disrupted, regrouped quickly, their resolve unbroken. Steele knew this was only the beginning of a much larger campaign. As the fleet regrouped and prepared for the next phase, a message from Earth came through. President Moreno's image appeared on the command deck's main screen, her expression resolute. "You've done well, Admiral," she said. "The galaxy is watching, and they're seeing what humanity is capable of. But we must push harder. The coalition will not back down easily, and neither will we. Keep pressing. Show them that their time is over." Steele nodded. "Understood, Madam President. We'll make them regret ever underestimating us." The fleet surged forward, their victory in the first engagement fueling their determination. Humanity's declaration of war was no longer just words, it was a reality the galaxy could no longer ignore. The battle for the coalition's outer defenses had been a hard-fought victory, but it was clear to Admiral Marcus Steele that the real test lay ahead. Humanity's fleet had punched through the blockade, but deeper within the coalition's territory, the full might of their enemy awaited. Intelligence reports indicated that the coalition's Central Command had mobilized their elite forces, a fleet twice the size of the one humanity had just defeated. On the Resolute, Steele stood at the tactical display, analyzing the enemy's movements. The coalition was regrouping at a strategic choke point known as the Azure Rift, a region of space filled with treacherous asteroid fields and volatile energy storms. It was a natural bottleneck, and the coalition planned to use it to crush humanity's advance. "We can't fight them head-on in the rift," Steele said, his voice calm but firm as he addressed his officers. "Their numbers and firepower give them the advantage in an open engagement. We'll have to outmaneuver them." Captain Arya Voss, fresh from her team's success in disabling the command vessel, stepped forward. "The rift is dangerous, but it's also unpredictable. If we use the environment to our advantage, we can turn it into a trap." Steele nodded, a plan forming in his mind. "Agreed. We'll draw them into the asteroid field, force them to split their forces, and pick them apart piece by piece." The fleet began preparations for the next phase of the campaign. Engineers worked tirelessly to repair damaged ships, while intelligence officers scoured data for any advantage. Morale among the crew was high despite the odds. They had seen what humanity was capable of when pushed to the brink, and they were ready to prove it again. As the fleet entered the Azure Rift, the environment immediately lived up to its reputation. Asteroids the size of cities drifted through the expanse, their surfaces glowing with veins of volatile minerals. Energy storms crackled through the void, sending arcs of lightning flashing across the darkness. Steele's voice came through the fleet-wide comms, steady and commanding. "This is where we make our stand. Use the asteroids for cover, and keep your formations tight. Remember, we fight not just for ourselves, but for humanity's future." The coalition fleet arrived shortly after, their ships cutting through the rift with precision. The enemy commander, a cold and calculating strategist named Zarla, watched humanity's fleet with disdain from the bridge of her flagship. "They've cornered themselves," she said, her voice dripping with confidence. "This will be over quickly." But humanity had no intention of making it easy. As the coalition advanced, the human fleet broke into smaller groups, weaving through the asteroid field with an agility that caught the enemy off guard. Ambushes sprang from behind asteroids, and hit-and-run tactics disrupted the coalition's formations. On board the Resolute, Steele directed the battle like a master conductor, his commands precise and effective. Group Beta, flank their rear line. Group Delta, use the energy storm to mask your approach. Aria and her strike team played a pivotal role once again. Flying nimble, stealth-equipped ships, they navigated the asteroid field with ease, targeting the coalition's support vessels. By cutting off supply lines and disabling repair ships, they weakened the coalition's ability to sustain the fight. Zarla, watching from her flagship, grew increasingly frustrated. "They're using the field against us," she snarled. "Focus fire on their command ship. Break their coordination." Steele anticipated the move. "All ships protect the Resolute. Let them come to us." As the coalition concentrated their fire on the Resolute, Steele executed the next phase of his plan. He ordered several ships to detonate charges on specific asteroids, sending massive debris hurtling toward the coalition fleet. The sudden barrage of rock and energy forced the enemy ships to scatter, breaking their lines. Zarla's flagship found itself isolated, its escorts destroyed or out of position. Aria's strike team seized the opportunity, launching a daring assault on the flagship. They breached its hull and fought their way to the command center, their movements swift and coordinated. Inside, the battle was intense. Coalition soldiers, armed with advanced weaponry, met them at every turn. But Aria's team pressed forward, their resolve unshaken. Aria herself led the charge, her rifle cutting down enemies as they pushed toward Zarla's position. They reached the command center, where Zarla stood defiantly, her eyes burning with anger. "You think this will change anything?" she hissed. "The coalition will crush you, no matter what you do." Aria leveled her weapon at Zarla, her voice calm but firm. "Maybe. But not today." With a final burst of gunfire, the team secured the command center. Aria relayed the news to Steele, who immediately capitalized on the victory. The destruction of Zarla's flagship sent shockwaves through the coalition fleet, their coordination crumbling without her leadership. Humanity's fleet pressed the attack, driving the enemy forces out of the rift. By the time the battle ended, the coalition fleet was in full retreat, their losses staggering. Steele addressed the fleet, his voice carrying the weight of the moment. "We've done what they said was impossible. We've stood against the coalition's might and prevailed. But this is only the beginning. They will come again, and we must be ready." As the human fleet regrouped, the galaxy watched in awe. Humanity, once dismissed as insignificant, had proven itself a force to be reckoned with. The battle at the Azure Rift was not just a victory, it was a statement. Humanity would not bow. The remnants of the coalition fleet had retreated beyond the Azure Rift, their shattered formations scattered like debris in the wake of humanity's unexpected triumph. Across the human fleet, the mood was electric, a mix of elation and awe. They had faced overwhelming odds and emerged victorious, proving their resilience and ingenuity to a galaxy that had long dismissed them. On the bridge of the Resolute, Admiral Marcus Steele surveyed the aftermath on the tactical display. The rift's treacherous expanse still glowed with the faint energy of storms and the scattered wreckage of enemy ships. Victory was theirs, but Steele's expression remained stoic. He knew the battle was far from over. "This was a critical blow," Steele said, addressing his officers. "But it's only the first of many. The coalition will regroup, and they'll come at us harder than before. We need to be ready for what's next." Captain Aria Voss stood beside him, her face still marked by soot and exhaustion from the recent battle. "We've bought ourselves time," she said, her voice steady. "But we need more than just time. We need allies." Steele nodded, her words echoing his own thoughts. The battle at the Azure Rift had sent a clear message to the galaxy. Humanity was no longer a passive participant in galactic affairs. Their defiance had sparked hope among those oppressed by the coalition's iron rule. Whispers of rebellion were spreading, and humanity's fleet had become a beacon of resistance. On Earth, President Elena Moreno addressed the United Terran Federation and its allies. Her image was broadcast across human colonies and rebel enclaves in distant systems. "We have faced the might of the coalition and shown them what humanity is capable of," she said, her voice firm yet inspiring. "But this fight is not ours alone. Across the galaxy, there are those who suffer under the coalition's tyranny, who dream of freedom. To them, I say this: stand with us. Together, we can forge a new future." The call to arms resonated far beyond Earth. Messages poured in from independent colonies, disenfranchised species, and rebel factions eager to join the fight. Supplies, fighters, and intelligence began to flow into humanity's growing alliance. What had started as a desperate stand was now transforming into a unified movement. Meanwhile, deep in coalition space, their High Council convened in a secret chamber. The once confident faces of the council members were now etched with concern. News of humanity's victory at the Azure Rift had shaken their belief in their own invincibility. "This rebellion has gone too far," Kralin, the coalition's chief strategist, growled. "Humanity must be eradicated before their influence spreads any further." Another council member, a reptilian Zevran named Dras, leaned forward. "They've exposed a weakness in our approach. Fear alone will no longer suffice. We need to crush their spirit, or we risk losing control of the outer territories." The coalition began assembling a massive fleet, their most advanced ships and elite warriors brought together for a single purpose: to annihilate humanity and extinguish the spark of rebellion they had ignited. Back on the Resolute, Steele and his officers prepared for the next phase of the campaign. The victory at the Azure Rift had bolstered their ranks and resources, but the looming shadow of the coalition's retaliation was impossible to ignore. During a strategic briefing, Steele addressed the assembled commanders. "We know they're coming, and this time, they'll throw everything they have at us. But we're not the same force we were when this began. We've grown stronger, smarter, and more united. If they want a war, we'll give them one they'll never forget." As preparations continued, Arya Voss found herself walking the corridors of the Resolute, reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this point. The cost of their victories weighed heavily on her, friends lost, lives sacrificed. But she also felt a growing sense of pride in what they had accomplished. Humanity had faced annihilation and turned it into an opportunity to rise. Standing in the observation deck, she looked out at the stars. The void that had once seemed so vast and indifferent now felt alive with possibilities. She thought of the Allies joining their cause, of the hopes spreading across the galaxy, and of the battles still to come. "We've shown them what we're capable of," she murmured to herself. "Now we show them what we stand for." When the coalition's retaliation finally came, it was unlike anything humanity had faced before. Their fleet, a massive armada bristling with weapons, emerged from hyperspace on the outskirts of Earth's defensive perimeter. But this time, humanity was ready. Allied ships from across the galaxy joined the Terran fleet, their presence a testament to the growing unity of those oppressed by the coalition. As the two forces prepared to clash, the stars themselves seemed to hold their breath. Steele's voice rang out over the fleet-wide comms. "This is it. They think they can break us, but they've underestimated us at every turn. Today, we fight not just for humanity, but for a galaxy that refuses to live in fear. Stand strong. Fight hard. And remember, this is our time." The ensuing battle was the largest and most ferocious the galaxy had ever seen. Ships clashed in a dazzling display of firepower, strategies unfolded in rapid succession, and the fate of countless worlds hung in the balance. In the end, humanity and its allies stood victorious, their combined strength overwhelming the coalition's once unassailable power. The coalition, fractured and humbled, retreated into obscurity, its grip on the galaxy broken. As humanity celebrated its hard-won freedom, Ava, Steele, and their allies began the work of building a new order, one founded on cooperation and mutual respect. The galaxy, once ruled by fear, now looked to humanity as a symbol of resilience and hope. And so, Humanity's defiance had not only secured their survival, but had also reshaped the future of the galaxy itself. The stars no longer belonged to the few, they belonged to all who dared to dream.